Hi, everybody. I'm Dan Wells. I write horror, fantasy, and science fiction, and I talk about games on the internet. This week is Vampire Week, mostly by accident. I had a couple of books I really wanted to talk about, and they both turned out to be about vampires, so that's what we're going to talk about. The first is Chicago by Night, which is the 5th edition Vampire the Masquerade world book for Chicago. Now, as I have said before in my review of the core game, 5th edition is my first edition for Vampire the Masquerade. I'm not familiar with the earlier ones, I haven't played them, but according to my research, Chicago has kind of been the default setting for a very long time. And it shows. This book is incredibly complete. 370 pages, something like that, well over 300 at least, and immense detail, not just about the city itself, but about the people who live there. My only real critique of this book is that the flavor text sections at the beginning were a little overwhelming, to the point of, I would say, possibly overbearing. I didn't really have this problem with other vampire books, especially Camarilla and Anarch, which are almost exclusively flavor text. It's all in-world fiction and messages and emails and things like that. And that's fine. For some reason, all of that stuff that's present in all of the books didn't work for me in this particular book. And I don't know if that's because the fiction itself was written differently, or if maybe I just wasn't in the mood for it when I read it all. Thankfully, that's only the first couple of chapters, the first 50 pages or so, and then it gets into some really delightful stuff. So I want to stress right up front, and this is both a good thing and a very steep learning curve, that the majority of this book is vital cultural and political information that everybody needs in order to play in Chicago. The focus is less on what is it like to live in Chicago, although there's a little bit of that, and more on who are the major movers and shakers in Chicago itself. Now, the reason that Chicago is such a core setting, like I said, almost the default setting for Vampire the Masquerade, is because it represents a kind of neutral ground. Or maybe not neutral ground so much as accessible ground. Kind of the backstory of Vampire the Masquerade is that there are large clans of vampires, and these clans are assembled into much larger, I guess you would call them a sect or something like that. And the kind of the three main ones, at least that have been introduced thus far, are the Camarilla, the Anarch, and the Sabbat. Camarilla is kind of the main one, I guess you could say. They're the big group of old money vampires. They've been around for hundreds of years. They thrive on and benefit from the status quo. They want to maintain power, and they do not want to rock the boat. And so there's a bunch of the smaller vampire clans within that do what they can to keep the masquerade in place, make sure that the world doesn't find out about supernatural creatures, vampires, and so on. And they're the kind that have these generations old bank accounts that have just been accruing interest forever, and they have political power not just in the vampire world but often also in the real world, so that they can influence things and they can build their own base of influence. In contrast to that, you have the Anarch, who, as their name implies, are much more anarchist in their views. Some of them still support the Masquerade, but in general they do not support the Camarilla's power structure. They are upset that there are this one group of vampires that's trying to control everything and tell everybody what to do, and they don't like that. Anarch vampires tend to be younger, and there tend to be more of them because they don't follow as many rules. They embrace more kindred. They flame out hot and fast and bright, and then they die. And so they have more energy, let's say, but less stability. And then the Sabbat haven't been explored as much, but they're much more of a kind of apocalyptic cult of vampires that want to just kind of they want all the power the Camarilla has, but they also just want to be much more monstrous about it. They're less concerned with the Masquerade and with the status quo, and more so just with embracing the beast within and feeding their hunger. They're, at least in the current edition that I'm familiar with, they're not as big of a power base as Camarilla or Anarch, but they're around and they cause a lot of problems, and they're very interesting. So what makes Chicago unique is that while it is viewed from the outside as a Camarilla stronghold, most of the world thinks that the Camarilla have a really strong grip on the city and that they control it. In practice, it's much more fluid than that, to the point that the Anarch and the Camarilla often interact not only peacefully but pleasantly in the city. There's a lot of lies, there's a lot of give and take, there's a lot of compromise, and so no matter which clan you come from, you have the opportunity to survive and thrive in Chicago. And in fact, these kind of ecumenical player groups, the coteries that they form, Chicago's a good place because you can have all the different clans all working together there, which is really interesting. And so much of what makes Chicago a setting, a dynamic and interesting setting, are these political relationships and affiliations between the vampires. And so that's why I say that this is a stark, steep learning curve. This is not the kind of book that you can just pick up and read in a day and say, oh, okay, I have a good handle on this. There are just so many NPCs. So many NPCs. And the NPCs really are the setting in a very real way. Like, yes, there's a city and there's things you can do and there's places you can go, but more than anything else, Vampire the Masquerade is a game about relationships. And as such, the major people, the vampires that lead some of the clans or are important for other reasons, they are the setting. Getting to know them and interact with them and understanding what they want and what their plans are to get it, that's what Chicago is all about as presented here. And so, I to the point that I wish that there was some kind of a cheat sheet at the end to just say, this clan wants this clan wants this, this clan wants this, and here's who their boss is, that kind of stuff. It's all presented in a much more flavorful way, and that's good, and it's vital to have that flavor so that you can understand what Chicago is really about and really see it from the inside. But if I ever run a campaign set in Chicago like this, using this book, the very first thing I'm going to do is put together a cheat sheet for the players so that they know kind of what all the various clans are about and what they're trying to do. Now, while we talk about the clans in Chicago, one kind of neat thing that every book has done so far in 5th edition is introduce a new clan. So there were the core group in the core book, and then the Camarilla book added the Banu Hakim, and the Anarch group added, I think, the Ministry. Chicago, by night, adds La Sombra. and they're always referred to as the La Sombra, which is trips me every single time because La Sombra in Spanish means the shadow, and I assume that's where the name comes from, but they concatenate it into a single word and then they use an article at the front. So it's the La Sombra clan. They are introduced in this one, and they're very interesting. They're a Sabbat clan, and we don't have a ton of information about a bunch of different Sabbat clans, but they are kind of power hungry. They live in the shadows. They are willing to do whatever it takes to get the job done and embrace the darkness and so on and so on. They're actually a really cool clan, and I like them a lot. Really enjoyed reading all about them and who they are and what they do. So that was great. They also come with a new power thing. I can't remember what the power things are called. Let's figure it out here. Let's go into the PDF itself and I'll show you what's going on here. So we have this clan here that talks about the La Sombra, and it's disciplines. That's what they're called, disciplines. So they have every clan has access to 3 disciplines, and these guys have dominate and potence, which means that they are very physically strong and they're very mentally strong. They can exert their will, do mind control. But then they also have oblivion, which is the new one. And oblivion has all these neat powers like being able to cloak yourself in shadow, which has benefits not only for stealth but for intimidation. They have, the abilities to see through shadow, to do things with it, to travel through it, to hide themselves. Just a lot of neat little powers that are a cool addition to it. So I really dig it. So hooray for that. Now let me show you what I mean about the NPCs as well. So here we get into this, and we're going to talk about, for example, the Banu Hakim. And you get one paragraph about the clan itself and what it is doing in Chicago and what it's interested in. And then you get, let's call this most of 1, 2, 3 pages all about this one person, okay, whose name is Khadija Al-Kindi. And you get to know, kind of a little quote about her, little kind of a title, which is not to say that that's a title people have, but just a very quick summation of their character. Who were they before they became a vampire? Who are they now? What plots and things are they interested in? Where do they live? What resources do they have? What are their relationships to some of the other key people? What rumors can you hear about them? All of this stuff. And that exists for everybody. And so there was 2 people, and they each got like 2.5 pages just in Banu Hakim. Then we get into Bruja, and there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So many people just for, and again, 2.5, 3 pages each for each person. And so that's how this book goes. And getting to know who those people are is valuable. Now, I talked about adding, creating a cheat sheet, and I do think that that would be a valuable thing to do. But more than anything else, what this book excites me about, what this book makes me want to do, is to start with a group of vampires, maybe even just brand new, newly embraced kindred that are struggling to deal with the hunger and learn about the world, and just have them, one at a time, interact with the different clans and get to know the city that way, rather than dumping all of this information on their heads. Let them discover the city through play. Obviously, they would need a little bit of a cheat sheet up front to figure out, well, this is what, this is what I know, or these are the basic facts that all the vampires know. But then, if you've got to meet Maldavis here and get to know who she is and what she stands for and all this other stuff, and let them then form their own alliances and so on as they go. And there's a section here, chapter 7, is little adventure hooks that kind of allow you to do that. And some of them are more valuable than others. Like this first one here is just a guy at a boxing ring starts beating somebody up. That's the full extent of the plot hook, and it's others are much more compelling than that. This thing here, the Sanctity of Elysium, all of these others, they're short, they're very simple, but they're ways that you could bring in all of these NPCs, ways that you can introduce the characters to the people and the movers and the shakers who live in Chicago. Now, the most interesting, by far, is this chapter 8, The Sacrifice, which I'm immediately going to click off of because I don't want to give any... oh, that's a cool piece of art. I don't want to give any spoilers for it, okay? So we're going to go back and look at that. But this chapter 8 is, in my opinion, worth the price of admission by itself. That is a chronicle. It is an adventure that really uses this setting well. It is well designed. It is well written. And again, it would be slightly tricky to use. It is not designed in the least bit as an introduction to the setting. It is designed for player groups and characters who are already intimately familiar with the setting, and then it throws a monkey wrench into it. And that monkey wrench, it is not really a spoiler to tell you, is that two La Sombra vampires, that is not a clan that operates largely inside of Chicago, they're coming in from the outside. That's why La Sombra got included in this book. And so the adventure begins with the characters being called to a secret meeting, and somebody hands them an envelope and a note and says, the Prince of Chicago, the most powerful person here, he wants you to go collect these two people from the airport. They're coming in tomorrow night. You need to make sure that they get to the prince safely. And we suspect that there might be trouble from some of the other people in town if they find out that La Sombra vampires are moving in. We want you to solve those problems and deliver those vampires safely. And so what becomes, what starts out as a fairly simple, again, just escort job, go to the airport and get these people, turns into a absolutely epic story about the politics of Chicago. And the characters have the chance not only to choose small things like how they're going to solve the problems and how they're going to deliver the vampires and that sort of thing, but the players have a chance to choose some really big things. They have the chance to influence the highest power levels of Chicago and arguably shape the vampiric destiny of the entire world going forward based on how they handle this particular situation. Who are these La Sombra vampires coming in? What do they really want? How will this very tightly wound puzzle box of a social city react to these outsiders and to their plans and their schemes? And the players are right in the middle of all of it. It's a really well-designed adventure that gives a lot of freedom while also having a strong through line and some really solid set pieces and character moments all through it. Can't say enough about this adventure. It's so good. But again, just to repeat that caveat, it's the kind of thing that makes me immediately want to find some friends and put together a coterie and run a game of Vampire so that I can play this Chapter 8, The Sacrifice. But in order to fully appreciate that adventure, you would have to play several other adventures in advance to make sure that your characters not only know who all of these other clan leaders are and all these other NPCs, but have prior relationships with them. In fact, the opening letter that you get at the beginning, that's from the prince and says, "Hey, take care of this problem for me." It says, "We suspect that there could be big trouble from 3 people. We assume you already know which 3." Now, to their credit, the adventure also includes 3 little handouts to say, here's exactly who we think is going to cause trouble. But again, the story and the setting assumes that the players already have a really solid handle on who everybody is and how they all fit together. And so it could be a really wonderful, let's say, midpoint to a long campaign. Spend a few months, several sessions getting to know the city, getting to know all the people, throw this adventure at them, which has the possibility of cementing or shattering the status quo depending on how the players do it. And that's one of the things I love about Vampire in general, is that because it is not about heroes fighting monsters, because it is not a clear-cut good guy, bad guy dichotomy, the players have the chance to embrace any of these clans, to join the Camarilla and, try to cement a power structure for themselves, or to join the Anarch and try to bring a power structure down, to join the Sabbat and just kind of go nuts. And what's great about this adventure in the book is that it fully allows for any of those approaches. And if somebody decides, well, you know what, I'm going to do exactly what the prince says, and I'm going to solve this problem, and I'm going to suck up to him, they're going to get rewarded. They're going to have a lot of extra social clout and social currency, and they could get some extra boons and rewards and upgrades to their haven and all kinds of things. If, on the other hand, they decide, you know what, no, some of these other ideas and options that crop up during the adventure are much more appealing to me, and I like those philosophies and those people better, you could follow those and take things in a wildly different direction. So it's a great setting because it allows for all of that, and it has a wonderful adventure that highlights all of that freedom and all of those things. Really, at the end of the day, it's just a fantastic book. Once you get over the speed bump of the fiction in the beginning, and again, maybe I was just in the wrong mood or approaching it the wrong way, and maybe you'll read the fiction and it will work flawlessly for you. However it pans out, that represents maybe 1/7 of the overall book, and the rest of it is all phenomenal stuff. So, Chicago by Night for Vampire the Masquerade, 5th edition. Really, really good. Let me close with, of course, my standard little promos. I am an author. I write a bunch of books, including horror. I haven't written any vampire books, but I've definitely written some supernatural murderer books and serial killer books and things like that. That if you're interested in this kind of game, you might be interested in my books as well. So look me up, Dan Wells. You can find my website down in the notes underneath, or you can just look me up on Amazon or Audible or whatever. I actually, last week, I just found out this morning, because the data was released, but last week I had the 4th most popular book in the Audible fiction list on Audible. Not for one of my horror, it was for one of my science fiction books. But, yay me, it's called Stargazer. I was really happy to see that. Hitting number 4 on the overall fiction list, that's pretty rad. That makes me feel pretty happy about myself. So, thank you for listening to me brag about it. I will also let you know that I am a professional game master, and that I run games for people. And if you would like to play something, including possibly Vampire the Masquerade, hit me up. Send me an email. All the information for that, again, is in the notes under this video. So, thanks for watching this. I always like making these videos. I hope you enjoy watching them. My name is Dan Wells, and you are awesome.